I will warn you, microphones and I are usually not friends. So hopefully it will go okay today. And thanks, Colin, for the fantastic introduction. Wow. Feel like I should just sit down probably and let you think whatever you want to think over the next 30 minutes. And hopefully you'll enjoy this. And I'm looking forward to speaking to you. Like Colin said, I've been with them for a long time. And I'm going to try to be light. And we'll see how that goes. My goal today is to be brief, like a good commencement speech. I think it's 45 minutes. If it goes that long, I have not succeeded. Okay, so I wouldn't mind if somebody kind of goes, hey, 30 minutes or something. Okay, have some fun, and I think fun may have been the wrong word there. But let's say be light and sort of enjoy this. Not be too serious, but think about this in a fairly light way. Okay, have a message. You will get the message. I can promise you, because I always believe in takeaways from a presentation. So I hope you'll get that message. And to be thoughtful, and I said inspirational. I decided later after I sent in I probably should have said evocative, because inspirational is kind of pompous. And I don't necessarily intend to inspire you, but maybe make you think a little bit about what we've been doing for all these years, where we are, where we came from, what comes next. That's sort of what my goal is today. And you may know that I'm actually subbing for Henry Bastian, who is the Land Fire Business Lead for the Department of the Interior, Office of Wildland Fire. So he's sort of my boss, I would say, since they provide all the funding. Doesn't that make him your boss? I think it does, even though he's not my supervisor. And I'm sorry that you won't hear from him directly, because he has a real interesting perspective and vision. He is not just a fire guide, despite what his title is. He's a lot more than fire. He used to work on national parks and other things like that. So I'm sorry that you won't hear from him, because instead you're going to have to forced to hear, sort of a sermon of sorts. I'm reliving my academic days back when my niche in academia was spatial data accuracy. That was what I did back in the 80s and 90s. That was my thing. And I actually used to style myself as the minister of maps, the acolyte of accuracy, and the pastor of precision. And I actually did, on presentations, strut up and down the stage with my great Georgia accent, Bible belt all the way, sounding like an evangelist. But I'm not going to do that today. Okay, I'm going to try to keep it calm. I'm going to try to stay behind the lectern so that, you don't feel like you're in a church. But it is kind of a sermon, because I feel very strongly about why we're here and what we're doing and what we need to do. I feel very strongly about it. My career is coming to an end, and I hope that we can leave something behind, all of us, when we do. And so I'm hoping that that there's a little thought that you have once we're done, and the importance of what we're doing. So just to have a little lightness to it, I actually wrote a poem. And Randy, my teammate, actually called it a limerick this morning. He hasn't heard it. He called it a limerick. That might be better, because it's more Dr. Seuss than Robert Frost. So I think we could probably say poem is maybe stretching it a little bit, but and some of you might be embarrassed or be interested in the poem. It's only 3 verses. It's very short, but I hope it kind of gets us started in the right frame of mind. Okay, so here we go. Ready? There once was a woman named Anne who worked with a cowboy named Han to develop a plan for managing land like only two brilliant people can. Along came Colin and Leonardo too, bringing VDDT as the tool to use. VDDT became Path for a second or two, and now SyncroSim for the work that you do. Like coral, COVID, connectivity, climate, and carbon. I love alliteration. Good. LCF, Lucas, and Landfire for certain. There's water, wisdom, wetlands and wildlife too. More alliteration. Together, I think there's no limit to what we can do. Because I think we're going to try to come together here and realize that we may all be working separately, but most of what we do is very common. The core of almost everything we do is very common, and that's going to be the message that I hope you get from today. So that's the end of my poetry career for today anyway. Thank you. So I've started to hint at the message, but we're not there yet. We're getting there, not quite yet. Because connecting things is sort of my joy. I love it. That's what I'm always looking for. How do we connect things? How do we find the things that are in common and connect them? And I think connections create very, very useful insights into our own work and understanding what other people do. So I'm going to do this through some analogies, and I can hear my teammates back there eyes rolling from here because they get this a lot. I deal a lot in analogies. So when we talk about the connections today, I'm going to sort of take a real big swerve here. And we're going to talk about Darwinian evolution for a minute. So as we take this diversion, I do want you to be thinking about commonalities and connections. So I'd say reading about evolution is one of my personal hobbies. And if you read like Richard Dawkins, he's a gradualist, right? Tiny changes over time, accumulating. Books like The Selfish Gene, Greatest Show on Earth, etc. He's a real gradualist, right? Well, there's another guy named Stephen Jay Gould, if you haven't read his books, The Panda's Thumb, right? Who believes evolution is punctual, that the majority of evolution occurs in big jumps and leaps created by some sort of external influence. And I would contend that it's basically both. We go through time, we gradually change things and evolve things, and then something happens and we get a big jump. We get new opportunities like continental breakup, right? Separating marsupials on Gondwana from mammals on Laurasia back however 200 million years ago, however long it was. So we get these little things happening that accumulate, then we get a big jump. Asteroid collision, right? We're all familiar with a big asteroid collision that basically opened up all these ecological niches for mammals, right? That's not gradual. But there were gradual changes between continental breakup and asteroid. Now we have ice ages and climate variation and all these things. And I put humans in here, of course, as one of the things that I think has impacted evolution. Think about breeding animals and the things we've done with plants and things like that. So I contend that what we have is a staircase where the treads are sort of gently sloping upward, and then we have risers that go up, and we have a big, big leap. Let's go on. Because I've been involved in GIS basically since day one, since the late 70s. I would say the same thing about GIS. I'm always looking for connections and commonalities. We talk about the concepts, if you're familiar with back in Ian McHarg in the 60s and his transparent overlays and all these things. And then we get computer cartography. And then we have little tweaks in between, right? Little things we add to the programs and things like that. Then we get a twinkle in Jack Dangermond's eye. Hey, let me connect my ArcNode spatial database to an actual commercial product called Info. And voila, we have ArcInfo. That's the first time we really created a joint, what we would call a true GIS. That was a big leap. Interoperability, GPS geo-corrected image, all these kind of things are big leaps in the technology. But we had a lot of small changes in between that accumulated. So I see a lot of commonality in how things evolve over time. Systems and processes and platforms and things like that all tend to sort of occur, I think, in this way. And I would say the same STSIM. Sorry, STSM, STSIM, SyncroSim. I kind of bundle all three of those things together. So if I say it wrong, my apologies. But I'd say we go back to some of the, I mean, I think probably I go all the way back to Markov chains and things like that as the original sort of ideas for state and transition modeling, right? But then you had a project like the Colorado River Basin Project, which Wendell was on, that really started to develop this as a real platform for using state and transition modeling in a real situation. So I had user-driven modeling VDDT as a big leap, because I think we found out as we were actually within the Landfire program, actually created 2,000 VDDT models over 5 years. You can't do that if it's not user-driven. Okay, so that was a big jump. Then we had the tweaks. Okay, somebody called Leonardo and said, "Hey, I need a new way to do a graph." Right, that's a tweak. Oh, I want this button on the thing. That's a tweak. Those little things accumulate over time. Then we had SyncroSim, which again, I think was a big jump because it's the platform on which all of our things are going to run on. It's the base. Behind the scenes, the what I call the data operator that we all depend on to manage our data and projects. And again, more tweaks. And then we got the old raster simulator, and I'm trying to see if Louis is smiling. Raster simulator, and then tweaks, and then adding things like stocks and flows. And I think that we can see the commonalities between all these things, that the small changes accumulate over time, and then we get a big jump. Somebody has a moment of inspiration, or somebody has a real need that requires something different, and we get this big jump. So I do think that thinking this way is very important, because what we're going to find out is I think it takes different things to have the gently sloping risers than it does to have the big jumps. You know, we have to think differently about what we're doing and realize that that's the way it's going. So here's what I'm going to start to have a little fun. This is the SyncroSim dog park. We're all in the dog park together, but the vast majority of the time we're off running on our own, doing our own thing, diggity jog, nipping at each other, running away, barking. You know, we're all doing our own thing, but we're all in the park. So I've just said, hey, there's Ben. Here's Ben Sleater. I see Chris Stockdale over there under fire. Okay, and there's Louis under planning, and I see Catherine here's under invasives. But the point here is just to realize that we all are playing in the same park. So there must be something very similar about what we're doing and what we need. And we need to keep that in mind as we go forward. I think for evolutionary steps, we need to be more like this, where we're all kind of hooked together occasionally and we're all pulling the sled, not running around on our own and thinking only about what we need. If we only think about what we need, we are missing an opportunity. You know, sometimes you have to think outside your own darn box, because if you don't, you're just going to be stuck in that box forever. And I really think that we need to be thinking, hopefully by the end of this conference, that there are times when we need to come together. I just added them again. Okay, all our different partners here, there are many of them. I just threw up some that I knew were here, I knew were going to be here. So us, USGS, DOD, etc. I'm asking you to think a little bit outside your normal comfort zone. We've been fortunate in the Landfire program to usually be able to sometimes cover things that other people couldn't cover, like documentation. Who wants to pay for documentation? You know, but you got to have it. You know, you really have to have it, but nobody ever puts that in their budget. So we try to think of those things as background. That's why we've been working together, I think, well, so long, is because, so, you know, we'll let other people do these things and we'll kind of come in behind and try to clean up the mess that you left, you know, as you slid off into the distance. Okay. And I'm sorry about reading the notes, but if I don't read the notes, I'll be off on some kind of other weird tangent. And I would actually suggest, and I'm just going to go here and go back to the evolutionary diagram that I had for state transition simulation model. And I'm pointing out the raster simulator here as a really prime example of what I'm talking about. Because I think we all probably what we used to call the raster simulator, that was Louis' term, I believe. That's why I asked him if he was smiling. It's basically creating the spatial functionality, because all the work that we did before that was all aspatial. There's no connection to spatial data whatsoever, except maybe calculating some parameters or initial conditions or something like that that we would use in the modeling. But Louis really wanted the raster simulator and really made a case for it and was able to develop a significant amount of funding to support it, but not enough. So what did we do? Well, what did we do, Colin? We called and begged and and basically started asking people, and we put together a consortium of people who could all put in just a few $1,000, $2,000, $4,000, $6,000, and we collected it all together, and we got enough money to actually complete the first version of the quote raster simulator, which we now think of as the spatial functionality of SyncroSim. And I think that was something that was a good lesson for us to remember today, that we need to be thinking together and thinking collectively, not necessarily individually all the time. I'm not trying to take away your individuality or your individual identity or your individual work, but I am asking you to think about the community as itself and about what we can all do together. So I'm thinking the tweaks we have, hey, we all work independently on that. But those big evolutionary steps like the raster simulator, they probably need a community effort. So the lesson to me is community. And I think at times we must all pull together, and I think this is a good time for us to be thinking about that, maybe establishing new relationships. We're all here in the same place. We're in the hallway, we're having some meals together and everything. Without sort of hiding all our personal needs and goals, we can work together and we can pool our resources and we can pool our ideas together to actually create a much better future than what we would if we worked individually. So I say, we can work individually to survive, but I think we have to work collectively to thrive. And I don't just mean this week at this meeting. I mean all throughout the year. And some of you probably got tired of getting emails from me and phone calls and invitations to conference calls about futuring for SyncroSim. I think I see a lot of heads nodding and things up here say, yeah, I wish he'd leave me alone. But I do think those are the kind of things we need collective thought about. And maybe at some point, collective resources. I'm not worried about yet how you pay for it. That's not the worry. We don't worry about paying for it until we know what we're going to do. And I think we still need some ideas and real thought from people here this week, maybe even after my presentation, because I don't think I went 45 minutes, did I? Okay. About how we do that. How it is a community. This is not Microsoft. This is not Google. This is not some company that does its own thing. We actually drive the development of this platform. We do. So let's remember that and think about how we participate in that process and how we can actually support that process. And I think that there are things on the horizon. I'm going to hear about some of them today, and tomorrow I'm hoping about things that we can really learn from and really see how that we can think collectively about what the future should be and how we can really support the Apex team to identify those things and then actually develop them. So that is all that I wanted to stand up here and say on my own. And I'm hoping that you understood that the message in the end was collective action, that it was community, that it was working together, despite me using all the pictures of dogs and staircases and things like that to try to get you thinking and saying, I'm hoping that message came through, because as I would say, and what Colin said might not be here if it weren't for me. I think that's a stretch, but let's say we would not be here if we did not do this in the past. This would not exist in the form that you see it today. The thing that you're using would not exist without that. And so remember that as we go forward through the week, and let's think about what we can do in the future and create a good future together.